Hello and welcome to the National Press here. Bonjour et bienvenue au Théâtre National de la Presse. Je m'appelle Elizabeth Thompson de CBC. With us today we have Privacy Commissioner Daniel Therrien who will be talking about his latest report. Avec nous aujourd'hui, on a le commissaire de la vie privée, M. Daniel Therrien, qui parlerait de son nouveau rapport. M. Therrien?
Merci beaucoup. So good morning, everyone. Bonjour. Comme vous le savez, à l'instar de mes prédécesseurs, je réclame depuis plusieurs années une réforme fondamentale des lois sur la protection des renseignements personnels. Dans le discours du trône de jeudi dernier, le gouvernement s'est engagé à revoir les règles qui encadrent le nouvel environnement numérique de manière à ce qu'elles soient équitables pour tous. Je tiens à saluer cet engagement. La question n'est donc plus de savoir si l'on devrait ou non moderniser les lois, mais plutôt de déterminer comment procéder. Il s'agit d'une période stimulante où nous avons une occasion rare de mieux protéger les Canadiens lorsqu'ils ont recours à un outil indispensable à la vie moderne, les technologies numériques. Pour le meilleur et pour le pire, les technologies axées sur les données sont des technologies perturbatrices. Elles ouvrent la voie à l'innovation et à la croissance économique, mais il a été démontré à de trop nombreuses reprises qu'elles peuvent porter atteinte à nos droits, notamment le droit à la vie privée et nos droits démocratiques. Nous faisons face à une crise de confiance. Les sondages nous indiquent que 90% des Canadiens sont très préoccupés par leur incapacité à protéger leur vie privée. Seulement 38% des Canadiens croient que les entreprises respectent leur droit à la protection de la vie privée. Et l'an dernier, environ 30 millions de Canadiens ont été victimes d'une fuite de leurs données personnelles. We have a crisis of trust. Canadians want to enjoy the benefits of digital technologies, but they want to do it safely. It is the role of government to give Canadians the assurance that legislation will protect their rights. Given that privacy is a fundamental human right and a necessary precondition to the exercise of other fundamental rights, such as freedom, equality, and democracy, the starting point of reform should be to give privacy laws a rights-based foundation. In other words, new privacy laws should reflect fundamental Canadian values. But what does it mean to have rights-based privacy laws? That is what our annual report seeks to clarify. Premièrement, la législation doit traiter la protection de la vie privée dans toute son ampleur et sa portée, comme un droit de la personne et non pas uniquement comme un ensemble de règles techniques telles que le consentement, l'accès et la transparence. La protection de la vie privée est souvent considérée à travers le prisme des politiques de confidentialité des sites Web, menant à une forme très imparfaite du consentement. Il s'agit là d'un point de vue réducteur qui désavantage nettement les individus lorsqu'ils sont confrontés à des organisations ayant infiniment plus de connaissances et de pouvoir. Privacy is so much more than consenting or not to terms and conditions dictated by companies. It is a human right, and it must explicitly be recognized as such in privacy laws. To that end, our report suggests the adoption of clauses that seek to reflect these values while acknowledging legitimate business interests and the public interest. Second aspect of rights-based law, the reform private sector privacy law must put an end to self-regulation. It is untenable that organizations like Facebook are allowed to reject my office's findings as mere opinions. The law should no longer be drafted as an industry code of suggested best practices that companies are free to adopt or not, but rather as a set of enforceable rights and obligations. Third, we need enforcement mechanisms that offer quick, effective remedies for people whose privacy rights have been violated and that help to ensure ongoing compliance with organizations. This includes empowering the Privacy Commissioner to make binding orders and impose consequential but proportional penalties for non-compliance with the law. As well, my office should be enabled to conduct proactive inspections to ensure organizations are demonstrably accountable for their privacy practices. Fourth, in the public sector, the law should allow privacy-invasive activities and programs only where federal institutions can demonstrate that they are necessary and where the intrusion is proportional to the benefit to be gained. This issue was central to our Statistics Canada investigation. We received more than 100 complaints about 2 programs involving the collection of credit histories and the proposed collection of line-by-line financial transaction information from banks without the knowledge or consent of affected individuals. Canadians were deeply troubled by these initiatives. This concern was clearly justified given the scale of the proposed collection, the highly sensitive nature of the information, and the fact that the information in question would paint an intrusively detailed portrait of a person's lifestyle, consumer choices, and private interests. While the investigation did not find that Statistics Canada had violated current laws, it did raise significant privacy concerns. It also served to highlight the inadequacy of existing legislation. While Statistics Canada officials described their objectives in general terms, they did not demonstrate the necessity of collecting so much highly sensitive information about millions of Canadians. Nous sommes heureux que Statistique Canada ait finalement accepté nos recommandations de suspendre la mise en œuvre des projets tels qu'ils avaient été conçus initialement et de travailler avec nous pour remanier les initiatives afin qu'elles respectent les principes de nécessité et de proportionnalité. Before closing, I want to emphasize that a rights-based law is not an impediment to innovation. To the contrary, good privacy laws are key to promoting trust in both government and commercial activities, a trust that is now sorely lacking. Without that trust, innovation, growth, and social acceptance of government programs can be severely affected. Some leading voices in the tech industry are also calling for legislation that ensures responsible innovation. Notably, Brad Smith, CEO of Microsoft, said recently that society needs a new wave of privacy protection that shields human rights. If the president of Microsoft thinks that we need rights-based privacy laws, I assume he's not too concerned with risks to innovation. While Canada used to be a leader in privacy protection, the world is now passing us by. Notably, new privacy laws or bills in the United States include several of the elements I recommend for Canada. And there is a risk that Canada's adequacy status under EU law will not be renewed in 2020, which would jeopardize Canadian trade. In its early years, the Internet was seen and promoted as an instrument for freedom. Now we see more clearly that it brings very important benefits, but also very grave risks to our values. It is time to put values and rights at the center of our privacy laws. Thank you.
Thank you. Merci. First question, Michel Lamarche, TVA.
Bonjour.
Qu'est-ce que ça entraîne comme problème pour les particuliers, pour les individus au Canada, que tous les pays de la planète nous dépassent, comme on dit?
Ben, évidemment que les Canadiens n'ont pas la même protection que celle dont bénéficient les citoyens d'autres pays. C'est évidemment très malheureux. Le Canada est un leader il y a quelques années, quelques décennies en tout cas. Et maintenant, on s'est fait plus que rattraper. Donc, le premier point, c'est que les Canadiens ne bénéficient pas d'une protection aussi grande que celle dont bénéficient d'autres citoyens de par le monde. Et comme je viens de le dire, le Canada a vu ses lois considérées comme étant équivalentes aux lois européennes en l'an 2000, ce qui permet les échanges commerciaux basés sur les données personnelles entre l'Europe et le Canada. Ce statut-là est à risque et va être réévalué en 2020, et ce statut-là est à risque si les lois canadiennes ne sont pas modifiées de façon suffisante. ce qui mettrait à risque les relations commerciales, les échanges commerciaux entre le Canada et les États-Unis. Ceci étant dit, comme je l'ai dit au départ, je suis très heureux de voir que le discours du trône annonce l'intention de légiférer pour assurer l'équité dans l'espace numérique. Il n'est pas question expressément de vie privée dans le discours du trône, mais je pense que cet énoncé d'intention veut dire, entre autres, des lois améliorées en matière de protection des données personnelles. Donc, c'est un bon pas. Maintenant, c'est une occasion qu'il faut saisir et il faut améliorer les lois de façon adéquate.
Si les lois de protection des données, de la vie privée ne sont pas fondées sur des droits, comme vous dites, les épisodes de fuite de données, est-ce que les Canadiens doivent les craindre davantage dans le futur?
Quand je dis, entre autres, que les lois sur les protections des données doivent être fondées sur les droits, entre autres, ce que je dis, c'est que la loi actuelle est fondée, pas complètement, mais beaucoup sur le principe de consentement. Alors, on fait reposer la responsabilité de la protection des données beaucoup sur les épaules des individus en vertu de la loi actuelle. Et évidemment, c'est tout à fait injuste pour les citoyens que d'avoir à être responsables de cela lorsqu'elles font face à des compagnies qui sont beaucoup mieux outillées que les citoyens pour essayer de colliger et d'utiliser les données personnelles. Donc, le point principal, c'est que ces dernières années, on a vu que c'est un, injuste et deux, inefficace que de faire reposer la responsabilité de la protection des données sur les épaules des citoyens. Il faut que le gouvernement s'en mêle, il faut que le Parlement adopte des lois qui protègent les citoyens. Il y a toujours une place pour le consentement, mais le consentement ne doit pas être le seul fondement de la protection. Donc, le gouvernement doit agir. Et pour faire le lien avec les fuites de données, de la même façon, ce ne devrait pas être aux individus d'avoir tout le poids de protéger la sécurité de leurs données en étant prudents, en utilisant les bons mots de passe, etc. Ça dépasse de beaucoup ces questions-là. Il faut que les lois soient renforcées pour protéger les données et il faut que les compagnies soient forcées d'avoir une attitude plus responsable dans le traitement des données que leurs consommateurs ou les citoyens leur confient.
I forgot to mention that we have a bit of an audio problem, so when it's your turn to ask a question, you will get a microphone that will allow the interpreters to, and those on the line to also hear. Reminder is one question, one follow-up. We'll be going to Tom Korski, then David Aiken.
Commissioner, in your report, you state you found no evidence StatsCan violated current laws, but then state the project would have exceeded StatsCan's legal authority, presumably under the Statistics Act. So I'm assuming they broke no laws, in your opinion, because the Bankers Association called Global News. Correct? Allow me to rephrase if it's difficult.
Yes.
They didn't break any laws because they didn't get a chance to.
The report makes a distinction between current laws and what I advocate should be the desirable future laws in terms of the collection of information by
I don't want to
government
badger you,
agencies.
Commissioner. Your report is quite clear. The project would have exceeded StatsCan's legal authority to collect personal information today, now. Correct?
There were two projects, one for credit information. Under current law, there is no question under current law, what Statistics Canada wanted to do was in conformity with current law. not in accordance with the principles of necessity and proportionality, but in accordance with the current flawed law, I would say. With respect to the pilot project involving banks, there was no violation of the law because Statistics Canada suspended or never proceeded with the collection of information that if they had proceeded with the collection of information might well have violated the current law. So it's the suspension or the suspension of the pilot project that led to the fact that they did not breach current law. That said, I think this file with Statistics Canada, I would say, is a good example of something that was very challenging. People were extremely concerned, obviously, when what Statistics Canada wanted to do became public. And I would say that this is a good example of a challenge that turned into a good opportunity. Canadians were concerned about the level of intrusiveness of what Statistics Canada wanted to do. For instance, to collect line-by-line banking records to determine, to ultimately produce reliable statistical products for the government. The end goal was a good end goal, but the intrusiveness of the collection methods did not meet the principles of necessity and proportionality, which are not found in the current law. To their credit, it took a lot of time to get there, and at first, Statistics Canada was defending the design of its project on the basis that they needed as much information to produce credible statistics. To their credit, Statistics Canada accepted, after some discussion, to suspend the project and to work with us to limit the amount of information that they would collect and analyze, to still produce sufficiently reliable statistics, but with fewer information. So that's what I call a challenge that turned into a good opportunity.
Can I ask you, my only other question, Commissioner, is your report on StatsCan doesn't talk about the commercial value of the aggregate data stripped of identifiers. StatsCan could sell that. That was established in parliamentary committees. You don't have any comment on that. You don't comment on the Bankers Association offer to strip the data of identifying markers before they shipped it over to StatsCan. They offered to do that. StatsCan didn't want that. And you don't comment on the fact there was no informed consent. As a bank customer, I don't have a choice. If StatsCan wants to get the personal financial data of 23 million bank customers, they can ask 23 million bank customers. You didn't discuss informed consent. Can you comment?
Statistics Canada does not require consent under current law. But the fact that consent was not obtained was a key source of concern for Canadians, and I totally understand that. Current law doesn't require consent for Statistics Canada. We're going to work with them. They agreed to work with us to limit collection so that the intrusiveness of their collection is limited while still allowing them to achieve their goal of producing credible statistical products. The law does not require consent for Statistics Canada. We're involved in a discussion, in a joint work with Statistics Canada. We will advise them on how to better protect the privacy of Canadians while allowing them to deliver credible statistical products for the Government of Canada. I think that's a good outcome.
David Aiken, Global.
Good morning, Commissioner. Just thinking about the legislative reforms you've suggested the government might want to consider as part of the Statistics Canada investigation. If the reforms you are suggesting are not taken up, if the government takes no action to reform the Statistics Act or the Privacy Act, is it quite possible we end up in this same situation in the future with StatsCan? Maybe it's not banking data, it's health data, it's some other large data set. Do you see that in absent of any reforms, we could run into this same situation again and down the road?
Well, as far as Statistics Canada is concerned, I think there was a change of attitude on the part of Statistics Canada in ensuring that they deliver their products in a way that is privacy sensitive. I think they clearly, that particular agency rightly is of the view that they need the trust of Canadians in order to operate. So I think the likelihood that this will happen again at Statistics Canada is not very high. The success or relative success that we've had with Statistics Canada, I hope will be taken as a lesson learned by other departments so that when they engage in similar projects that collect intrusive amount of data, that they talk to us about how to mitigate privacy risks. So to answer your question, yes, there is a risk that this would happen again, particularly in other departments. But if they take the lessons from the Statistics Canada exercise, that is less likely to happen. And what would ensure that it doesn't happen would be to amend the law.
Thank you. Sort of along the same lines, in the last time that, in the last Parliament, we saw some changes to the authorities the Chief Statistician has to conceive of these projects and execute these projects with a relative amount of independence. And one of the issues that came up when parliamentary committees were examining this particular project was some lines of authority and reporting. And I wonder if you feel it's sufficient that the Chief Statistician can independently conceive of these big data projects without reporting to the minister and elected official, without doing sufficient consultation with your office. That seemed to be another issue here, that there was not sufficient consultation. In other words, do you think there needs to be, the Chief Statistician needs to be reporting to an elected official and again to a privacy commissioner, an officer of Parliament, when they conceive of these big types of projects?
The fact that the Chief Statistician has a high degree of independence from the government in ensuring that the government receives reliable statistics does not mean that he is not subject to the Privacy Act or the jurisdiction of the Office of the Privacy Commissioner. So the short answer is no. I don't think, even if the current system is maintained with a high degree of independence, nobody is completely independent, and the Chief Statistician remains subject to the Privacy Act and the jurisdiction of our office. So independence, I think, in the sense that you mean, is independence from the minister, but it's not independence from the law and the jurisdiction of our office.
Catherine Ledeck, Presse canadienne.
Monsieur Therrien, je voulais juste, je comprends un peu votre recommandation pour le secteur privé. Vous voulez mettre fin à l'autoréglementation. Par contre, je voulais peut-être juste que vous reveniez sur à quoi vous attendez du secteur public. C'est ça. Est-ce qu'il faut en comprendre que vous voulez que finalement, par exemple, Statistique Canada ou n'importe quelle institution fasse la preuve qu'ils ont besoin de faire intrusion dans la vie privée des gens pour collecter des données? Je vais juste revenir là-dessus.
Oui, alors, pour le secteur public, j'ai parlé de la question de la nécessité de la proportionnalité parce que c'est très pertinent dans le cas de Statistique Canada. C'est une recommandation, évidemment, qui vise l'ensemble des ministères. Si la loi sur la protection des renseignements personnels, la loi du secteur public était modifiée, une recommandation importante serait que l'ensemble des ministères soient assujettis à ce critère-là. Et ce que ça vise à faire essentiellement, c'est, étant donné que c'est beaucoup plus facile avec les technologies numériques de colliger, d'utiliser, d'analyser les données les risques pour la vie privée sont évidemment de plus en plus grands. Alors, il faut baliser le pouvoir du gouvernement de colliger ces renseignements-là. Présentement, la loi du secteur public permet au ministère de colliger tout ce qui est, à leur avis, pertinent à leur mandat. Utile, nécessaire, ça n'a aucune importance. En autant que ça a une certaine pertinence à leur mandat, ils peuvent colliger. Ce qui amène à des collectes excessives de renseignements, ce qui est un problème au niveau de la vie privée. Alors, le principe de nécessité et de proportionnalité viendrait baliser, donc, ces pouvoirs-là de l'administration publique. Je devrais ajouter que, ce critère-là de nécessité et proportionnalité, c'est une norme reconnue internationalement. Et la loi fédérale canadienne ne l'édicte pas, mais c'est un peu une exception à la règle, encore une fois. Donc, c'est une norme internationale qui devrait s'appliquer au Canada. Présentement, cette norme-là s'applique de par une politique du Conseil du Trésor, mais une politique, ça n'a pas la même force qu'une loi et ce n'est pas toujours suivi. Alors, il faudrait enchasser ça dans la loi. Au-delà de la nécessité et de la proportionnalité, l'approche qu'on suggère, à savoir que les lois du secteur privé, mais aussi du secteur public, soient fondées sur les droits de la personne, édictent des droits qui puissent être appliqués devant les tribunaux, qui donnent lieu à des recours efficaces et rapides. Tous ces principes-là s'appliquent à la fois aux lois du secteur public et du secteur privé.
Puis, dans vos remarques d'introduction de votre rapport, vous avez vivement critiqué la Charte canadienne du numérique. Je me demandais quelle était votre principale critique à cet endroit-là. Puis, est-ce que vous croyez peut-être que le gouvernement, justement, a présenté cette charte pour éviter de moderniser la loi?
Je vais donner la chance aux coureurs. Le discours du trône, encore une fois, énonce une intention de légiférer d'une façon à assurer une plus grande justice. Pour ce qui est du document d'intention, appelons-le comme ça, qui s'appelle la Charte numérique, qui a été publiée au printemps, il y a des choses là-dedans qui ne sont pas mauvaises. C'est un pas dans la bonne direction. Un, de dire qu'il faut légiférer. Deux, il y a un peu plus de poids à donner au consentement lorsqu'il peut être efficace. Alors, il y a des éléments qui sont positifs dans la charte numérique. Ce que j'aime moins, c'est, entre autres, le fait que la charte prévoit que les pouvoirs du commissariat seraient limités. On n'aurait pas un pouvoir d'ordonnance large, mais limité, qui reste à définir selon la charte numérique. Et le commissariat n'aurait pas le pouvoir d'émettre des amendes, par exemple, contrairement à ce qui se fait dans plusieurs autres pays, et particulièrement et aux États-Unis et en Europe. Alors, j'ai de la misère à m'expliquer pourquoi l'Agence de réglementation canadienne aurait moins de pouvoir que ses équivalents dans des pays comme les États-Unis et l'Europe, avec qui le Canada fait affaire. Je ne comprends tout simplement pas ça.
Jim Bronskill, Canadian Press.
There have been many calls for Privacy Act reform from you and from parliamentary committees over the years. The government doesn't seem to be in a huge rush to do this. How confident are you that the government will take up your recommendations and reform the laws?
Well, we see an intention in the speech of the throne, I think, which is an indication that the government intends to proceed with this in the life of the current parliament. So that's progress. I think the government should and probably does have an eye to the decisions that will come from Europe probably in 2020, which is very soon, on whether Canada's laws are adequate or not. So there is a clear risk to trade relationships with Europe if Canada's laws are not amended. The government rightly sees and has acknowledged that we are facing a crisis of trust. So I think all these elements show that I think it's likely that we will have legislation in the relatively near future.
One of the things Canadians read about almost every day is a breach of information by a private organization. And of course now there's mandatory breach reporting, and through the change to the law that has happened. What is your current state of thinking on how breaches are playing out and whether enough is being done to prevent them?
That's a situation that's particularly troubling. As I've said in my remarks, it is now required by a law for companies to report to individuals, but also to us, material or significant breaches of personal information. The law is 1 year old, and in that period, the reports that we received affect 30 million Canadians. That's basically not quite, but very close to every Canadian has been the subject of a data breach in the last year. That is just untenable. Now, companies should not be expected to have a perfect system to protect data, but we are seeing much too many of these breaches. And when we investigate these things, you'll recall Equifax in particular, but other breaches that we've seen, we often see inadequate corporate practices in terms of security safeguards. The personal data is said to be the oil of the new economy. Corporate organizations, rightly, are using personal data for business to make profits, and that's fine. That's the way the free economy goes. But there's a price for that. There are consequences to that. They need to protect data adequately, and it is just unacceptable to see that almost every Canadian's personal data has been the subject of a breach and is at risk of leading to identity theft. It just cannot happen anymore. So companies need to shore up, would be essentially my bottom line.
Alex Boutelier, Toronto Star.
Hi, Commissioner. Industry Canada released a white paper on PIPEDA reforms back in June, I believe, and
yes.
They outlined some suggestions or options for increasing your powers, including a circumscribed order-making power on cessation, or telling companies that they must stop certain practices. Can you just detail how what you're asking for in this report differs from what they floated in June, or is it largely in concurrence with what you want?
Yes. So the proposal that was outlined in the digital charter, or the white paper of the Innovation Department, talked about circumscribed order-making powers. Circumscribed in the sense that we would have order-making powers in terms of production of documents, for instance, which we already have. So that's the status quo. The only new powers that this proposal would give us would be the authority to stop all operations in a company if we were sufficiently concerned about the privacy risks. So it's a little bit like a nuclear bomb. You either recommend to a company to improve this or that practice, but that's only a recommendation. And if you're sufficiently concerned, it's a cease and desist order, stop everything. I think there's a good place for nuances in the use of authorities. So Other data protection authorities across the world have order-making authorities that are not circumscribed, that are not limited to cease and desist, and that works well. They have the authority to impose fines as well. I'll say two things about my concerns with that particular proposal, and I hope, so this was a proposal made in June. I assume that the government is continually revisiting its thinking and that they may be doing that as we speak. So the fact, our ask to have order-making powers with fines, which exists elsewhere, changes the dynamic of the relationship between our office and companies when we come to the end of an investigation. At the end of an investigation, as we saw in Facebook, if we find a violation, we want obviously practices to change. And under the current law, we saw what that led to. Facebook just said, thank you very much, we won't change our practice. If we had a broader order-making authority with fines, when we discuss with the company, we think you're violating the law, and we expect you to change your practice, the discussion with the company is a bit different. If the company knows that if they don't comply, they may be exposed to a fine, so they may be more inclined to actually change their practices. One, because the regulator says that they're violating the law, and two, to avoid a fine. The point here is this change in dynamic, one, ensures the protection of rights and makes the whole process much more efficient and effective, so that Canadians, at the end of the day, we're doing this for Canadians. At the end, so this kind of process ensures that Canadians can enjoy their rights as soon as possible. That's the point.
Alex, do you?
PCO has been engaged in over a year, I believe, of consultations on a government-wide data strategy. While they acknowledge that there are some risks in governments collecting more and more data, that they're very much focused on the potential benefits to government of having more personalized data on Canadians. Has your office been engaged in that process yet? And if so, have you raised any concerns with what they're thinking about?
We have had some discussions with PCO and others on the data strategy, holding essentially the same discourse that I'm holding today about the importance of rights. Yes, absolutely. From a public sector perspective, data can be very helpful in producing effective government programs, in delivering programs horizontally and not in a siloed way within a department. Data can be very useful. We all agree with that. As statistical programs are useful, they produce useful, credible statistics for the government and others. But that's not a reason to not to protect privacy. So that's the kind of discussion we have had. And what we're bringing today, i.e. that the law should have a rights-based foundation, would be consistent with that. Absolutely use data to produce better government programs, but not at the cost of privacy rights.
Molly Thomas, CTV.
Hi, Commissioner. Other than redesigning their projects, is there any other consequences for StatsCan?
I think it's a good outcome that we will work with Statistics Canada to redesign the project. So no, there are no other consequences. They remember that they have suspended the two projects in question. So what was of concern rightly to Canadians is not happening. And these projects will only be implemented after we come to an agreement on how this can happen in a privacy-sensitive way. I'll say this as well. So the Statistics Canada was proceeding according to its philosophy and the philosophy of other statistical agencies, where more data is always good because more data produces more reliable statistical products. That's their mantra. And when we come in as privacy regulators and say, well, hold on, you don't need to know each and everything that Mr. Smith or Madam Jones buys to have statistical products that are reliable, it took them a while to integrate this and to say, okay, we need to change things. So I think that's the positive aspect of this file, and it's in a sense a bit normal that in order for them to change their mantra, it took a bit of discussion. So I think we're going in the right direction. We'll see whether we reach a place where their objectives and privacy can be reconciled. I'm not saying that this is going to be easy, but I think we're going in the right direction.
Rights-based law that you're proposing, what kind of consequences do you want to see for a company that does the same thing? Because obviously they didn't break the law here, but they had an authoritative voice, especially the financial transaction project, demanding information and data. So what kind of consequences would you like to see for that?
So there are two main remedies that we're asking for: order making and fines. In this case, Statistics Canada agreed with our recommendation, so we did not need an order to make them do what we wanted them to do. In terms of fines, I think fines should be limited to, fines should be there because there will be companies or departments who will not act correctly unless there are fines. But fines should be imposed only where there's been a violation of the law. And here, there has been no violation of the law. So I don't think fines would be appropriate in this case.
Christiane Noël de Radio-Canada.
Bonjour, Monsieur le Commissaire.
Bonjour.
J'aimerais que vous m'expliquiez en français pourquoi, dans le cas de Facebook en particulier et pour d'autres compagnies en général, avoir le pouvoir d'imposer des amendes, ça change la relation entre vous et cette compagnie.
Oui. Alors, en vertu de la loi actuelle, il y a donc 6 mois environ, à la fin de notre enquête au sujet de Facebook, où on avait conclu que Facebook avait commis un bon nombre de violations de la loi sur le secteur privé. On a eu des discussions avec la compagnie pour qu'ils changent leurs pratiques de façon à se conformer à la loi. Et après quelques semaines de discussion, c'était devenu évident que Facebook ne changerait pas ses pratiques. Donc, on a fermé le dossier et on se dirige en cour fédérale pour les amener à changer leurs pratiques. Si on avait, comme on aimerait l'avoir, comme on le recommande, si on avait le pouvoir d'émettre des ordonnances et, lorsque c'est nécessaire, d'émettre des amendes aux compagnies, ça change la dynamique de la discussion entre nous et la compagnie. La compagnie ne peut pas dire vous ne pouvez que émettre des recommandations et ça, on pense que ce n'est pas dans notre intérêt de suivre vos recommandations, on ne le fera pas. Si la compagnie sait que l'agence de réglementation peut émettre une ordonnance et des amendes, la compagnie donc est plus enclin à suivre ce qui lui est demandé. C'est la pratique, c'est l'expérience des commissariats de par le monde que d'avoir ce genre de pouvoir-là, c'est utilisé en dernier ressort, mais d'avoir ça dans la trousse à outils, Ça change complètement la dynamique de la discussion entre l'Agence de réglementation et les compagnies au bénéfice des citoyens qui voient leurs droits respectés.
Merci. Deuxième question. Tout à l'heure, vous disiez le consentement, la transparence, c'est pas suffisant pour protéger les droits des gens, qu'on devrait avoir le droit à la vie privée inclus dans la Charte canadienne des droits, si je comprends bien. En termes concrets, qu'est-ce que ça veut dire pour les citoyens, le fait que le consentement et la transparence, c'est pas suffisant? Pouvez-vous me donner un exemple concret de comment c'est pas suffisant et comment avoir le droit en chasser, ça serait différent?
Prenons le cas. Alors, quand on recommande que les modifications, que des lois modifiées reconnaissent que le droit à la vie privée est un droit de la personne, ça l'appelle la question, qu'est-ce que c'est le droit à la vie privée? Le droit à la vie privée, ultimement, c'est le droit de vivre, de se renseigner par Google ou d'autres moteurs de recherche, par exemple, de communiquer, d'échanger, de socialiser avec d'autres personnes, avec des moyens numériques, sans craindre d'être surveillé continuellement par des compagnies ou, ultimement, par l'État. Mais laissons ça avec les compagnies pour le moment. Donc, c'est ça le droit à la vie privée. C'est pas le droit de protéger je ne sais quoi, c'est le droit de pouvoir fonctionner en société avec des outils modernes pour réaliser des activités normales qui mènent au développement de la personne, la socialisation, l'éducation, et ça sans être surveillé. Si la loi était modifiée pour reconnaître que le droit à la vie privée est un droit de la personne, même si une compagnie, pour donner les renseignements qu'une personne veut avoir, le fait en fonction de conditions auxquelles la personne a consenti, et tout ça mène à la surveillance systématique de l'individu, une telle loi fera en sorte que le consentement n'est pas opposable à l'individu, que la pratique de suivre la personne de façon systématique, soi-disant parce qu'elle y a consenti librement, ce qui est tout à fait faux, ne serait pas opposable à l'individu. C'est ça.
Okay. Michael, we're going to go to Michael Lee Murphy from the Wire Report, then the teleconference. We're running out of time, but if anyone wants a second round, just raise your hands. Michael?
You mentioned Facebook and fines. We've seen that Facebook has earmarked $5 billion for fines in the States, and we've seen the way Facebook has declined to respond or cooperate with your office. We've seen the way they've dealt with international committees. What gives you any confidence or hope that the government can provide any kind of a check on Facebook's data gathering activities as long as the profit motive for data gathering is there? Is that not the central issue?
The recommendations that we're making today deal with essentially data protection. But how to regulate Facebook is a matter that transcends data protection. There are questions of competition law and other considerations. So I think when you look at the kinds of laws that we need to properly regulate big tech, you need strong data protection laws, which is what I'm advocating, with large fines. Is that enough? Perhaps not. Then other regulators in other areas of the law need to consider whether Facebook or other very large tech companies are in violation of their area of the law. So I think it's a combination of various areas of the law that will bring us towards a potential solution.
So are you calling for other areas of the government to adopt particular approaches towards outfits like Facebook?
Well, in the U.S., for instance, we know that Facebook is under investigation under antitrust laws. I'm not suggesting any course of action for my colleagues in other regulatory areas. What I'm saying is, so your question, if I understand correctly, is would fines do the trick for Facebook? My response is it would do part of the trick, the part that is relevant to data protection, but I'm saying there are other areas that need to intervene to effectively regulate large technological companies.
Okay. Operators, or anyone waiting to ask questions by teleconference? Is there an operator? Ed?
I'm so sorry. Yes, we do have a question from Tim Pereira from MLX. Please go ahead.
Hi, thanks so much for taking my question. Commissioner, if the situation with Europe is as dire as you say it is, or possibly as dire as you say it is, by when do you expect a bill to have passed committee and then to have become law in order to prevent potential disruption in transatlantic trade?
So I'll leave these considerations to the government and the innovation department. I don't think, I'm speculating, but I don't think a bill necessarily needs to be adopted by 2020 for Canada's adequacy status to be renewed. Some seem to be of the view that the fact that there is a bill in Parliament might be sufficient, but this is speculation. I'm not going to say the law needs to be amended by such a date, otherwise Canada's adequacy status will not be renewed. But what I am saying is that with the laws that we have currently in Canada, adopted 20 years ago, and the progress made in Europe, that obviously there is a growing discrepancy between European law and Canadian law, and that creates some level of risk that Canada's adequacy status may not be renewed.
Do you have a follow-up?
Yes, can you give any sense of what's at stake here if the adequacy decision is not renewed, in terms of damage to the economy, damage to Canadian businesses?
Well, adequacy status means that data of EU citizens can flow to Canada without other means of protection. If adequacy is revoked, it would not mean the end of data transfers between Europe and Canada. It would just make things a bit more complicated. Companies would need to have special contracts to protect the data of European citizens. So it's not that trade would be stopped completely, but it would be more complicated, and that would have some impact on trade.
Is there another question on the line, or another person waiting for question?
We have no further questions for just at this time. Back to you.
Y a-t-il d'autres questions dans la salle? Anyone? Thank you very much.